Hey guys, Justin here. I wanted to take a quick second and let you know about Growth Now Movement Live, coming to Reading, Pennsylvania, May 30th to June 1st. This event is going to feature some of my top guests like Fabio Viviani from America's Top Chef, best-selling author and future board expert Sarah Centrella, Albie Manzo from Real Housewives of New Jersey, and many, many more. This is going to be a game-changing event. It is truly going to be a day-long rock concert for entrepreneurs, forward thinkers, and people who are ready to take their life to the next level. So if that's you, head over to gnmlive.com and grab your tickets today because prices are going up soon. Again, go to gnmlive.com now to level up your life and truly create the life of your dreams. Can't wait to see you there. What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now Movement. This week, I sit down with Brian Scudamore. I am so fired up for this interview, guys, because if you've ever seen me speak, a lot of the times during Q&A, people ask me, who was your worst interview? And I point back to episode number 5 as a reference point because it was terrible. Brian was the guest on episode number 5. He was the first bigger name that we had on the show, and I was nervous and scared, and it was horrible. So if you didn't listen to episode number 5 and you want to see how bad I was 2.5 years ago when I first started podcasting, go listen to that episode. It's really, really bad. The good news is this one's a lot better. Now, if you don't know who Brian is the CEO and founder of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, which is one of the largest franchises in the country. It's absolutely an amazing company where, any junk that you need to be picked up from your house, you just call 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and they come out and they take it for you. Really fast, really simple, really easy. The background of that story is he really started the company as one man and a truck when he dropped out of college, and it's blown up to be a massive company today. In this episode, we talk about Brian's new book, WTF, Willing to Fail, and we talk about how we must take chances in our life in order to succeed, and we have to be willing to fail in order to do that, because so often we're afraid of failure, we don't take the chances, and we never create the life of our dreams. This is something that I really, really believe in, not to be afraid to fail, to take that leap of faith, and Brian really knocks it out of the park with this book and this interview, and I know you guys are going to love it. But before we get to the episode, if you're listening to this and you're a podcaster and you're not reaching the potential that you really believe that you can reach, head over to launchfixgrow.com and join the mastermind that I've created. There's an online course and a mastermind of great podcasters waiting for you to join and grow your audience. We currently have people in there that have doubled, tripled, and even 10x their audience with the steps that we give them and the group that we have formed. Here's the cool part. It's free. Yep. It's free for 30 days. So launchfixgrow.com. Go sign up. We can't wait to help you with your show. Now, without further ado, let's get into the episode with Brian Scudamore. Brian, welcome back to the Growth Now Movement, man.
Justin, awesome to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we were just chatting before I hit record, and it was very, very important for me to have you back on the show because 2.5 years ago when I first launched, you were episode 5, and I want to say we interviewed you before we even launched. It was like, we put out this wish list of people we wanted on the show, and we interviewed you, and we completely bombed. The good news is, back then, nobody really listened.
Yeah, and I didn't think so. I did not think you bombed. For the record, for your audience, I think you did a great job. And clearly, if you didn't do such a great job, you wouldn't have built such awesome momentum with Growth Now.
Oh, well, thank you so much, man. That means the world to me. And, it's been a journey. I've lost a co-host. He's still my best friend, but I've lost him as a co-host, and everything's really kind of taken off. And I'm really glad that we reconnected for a number of reasons. So the show itself has really evolved from talking about strictly business to really personal growth and overcoming adversities and talking about rock bottoms. And, it's not necessarily where I want to go with you, but it's kind of in the concepts of what you've just written about in your book, WTF. So let's talk about that. First of all, the great name WTF, and then kind of how the whole concept came to be.
Sure. So the book is called WTF, which actually stands for, in my mind, willing to fail, having a willingness to screw up and make mistakes. I think that if there was one thing that I wanted to impart with people in writing WTF is that it's okay to fail. Before we got on the call today, you and I were talking about skiing, and you're not a skier, I'm a skier, but maybe you can relate to the story that I've got 3 kids, and my middle daughter was several years ago learning to ski. She was in ski school. She complained about the cold. She complained about falling and just how painful it was. Mm. And I said, honey, you know what? You got to understand that falling is okay in this sport. It's okay in life. You make mistakes, you get yourself up, and out you go in the world to start succeeding. You know, the best skiers in the world have fallen so many times. And so at the end of her next ski lesson, she came up to me and she goes, guess what? I fell today. Big smile. And so I knew I made an impact on her. So the book really is business lessons, life lessons from my journey. It's easy to look at my life right now and say, yeah, $300 million in revenue and life's all roses. Yeah, it's pretty darn good, but there's also some failures that have taught me how to get to where I am.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because I think sometimes when we don't look at it, like if people who aren't willing to fail, they don't even try. And so it becomes this stagnant life where they're miserable, they're not happy with whether it's their career or their partner, their relationship, whatever the case may be. So where was that instilled in your life where you were like, I'm just willing to fail, like I'm willing to give this a shot?
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a radio interview this morning and the guy said, do you think that this is innate, or do you think you've learned this willingness to fail? And I said, I got to hope and I got to believe that it's learned. Yeah. Because if it wasn't, why would I write a book to try and inspire others? If I've got some God-given talent to accept failure and no one else can pick that up, I want people to learn. I want people to learn from my mistakes so that they don't have to repeat them. Now, where did my first big mistake come in my life? Beyond personal stuff, which I'm happy to get into if you want at some point too. But from a business perspective, 5 years into the business, I had 11 employees. One bad apple spoils the whole bunch, and I probably had 9 bad apples. And I said, I don't know what to do to fix things here. I was in a doom loop because there I was not having fun in my business. So I fired all 11 people. I brought them in and I did it all at once in a group setting, which is intimidating as heck. But I said, you know what, guys, I've let you down. As the leader, I've not given you the love, the support you've needed to be successful. I might not have recruited the right people, but the only way I knew was to start again. A massive failure, because if you go from 5 trucks as I had down to 1, it's all I can drive at once. I'm sitting there going, man, have I ever screwed up? But I learned that day, it's all about finding the right people and treating them right. I now had a picture from that day on of what the right people were for me.
Yeah, and I know we kind of dove into that a little bit the first time we interviewed you, and we talked about the beer and barbecue test, which I still think is genius, which I've talked about countless times since our conversation. Just when you talk about, because I have people that work for me remotely, et cetera, and I have that same type of mentality of like, is this somebody that I'd want to be a friend with and go to a barbecue with and do all those types of things? So, you know, it's definitely, you're teaching these things that are sticking with people. You know, and when you go from beer and barbecue to willing to fail, I think for me, it was a fear of failure that had me start the wrong way, the podcast, and it took so long to grow for that reason. So I was so afraid of people judging me and being like, you know, what you did sucked and you're a terrible host, which I was clearly. But so I brought somebody along with me to kind of cushion the blow, right? So what would you say to somebody who they're still trying, but you don't feel like they're going all in?
Yeah, you definitely need to go all in. I think when you're building anything, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a following, whether it's a business, whatever you're building, you've got to go all in. It's hard to have 2 jobs, right? It's hard to divide your energy. And so when we have franchise partners for 1-800-GOT-JUNK or our newest brand, Shack Shine, the biggest prescription, the biggest thing they can do to fail and fail in a bad way where they can't recover is by dividing their attention and their focus across multiple things. Trying to run their current job while building a business, it doesn't work. You know, so how did I go all in? I quit university. I went to college. I sat down with my dad, a liver transplant surgeon, and said, Dad, I'm learning more about business, running a business. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to put all my chips on the table and take some risks. I'm going to be willing to fail. And I'm going to learn as I grow my business. So for someone that can't take that step and just dive off the cliff, you've got to have some faith in yourself to know that you're going to dive, you're going to make mistakes. And like your podcast, I didn't think you made mistakes. I thought you did a great job, and I'm not just blowing smoke, but it's clearly what's helped to make you successful with your podcast is the ability to look at how you've made decisions and how you've done things the way you've done them and say, hey, what do I need to change? What do I iterate? And how do I make things better?
Yeah, for sure. So was that when you took that leap to leave university and then start 1-800-GOT-JUNK, which I believe it had a different name back then, if I remember correctly.
It was called the Rubbish Boys.
That's right.
And
the Rubbish Boys.
It was just me, but a name that would sound bigger. But yeah, 1-800-GOT-JUNK today.
So was that your first time you were really willing to fail? Like, is that when you started to learn this whole process? Or because we talked about how, you can learn this. Was it something that you learned during that time?
Yeah, I think it's been, how many years now? Almost 30 years of learning. And day after day after day, things get better. Did I learn it at that moment when I said, I'm just going to buy a truck and do this? At the time, my vision for the Rubbish Boys was very small. It was a way to pay for college. But then I was learning so much and having so much fun and making tons of mistakes that I decided I'm going to go all in. But I think this sense of when did I start really learning to embrace failure? I think one of the stories that really changed my life was I hired an ex-Starbucks president, head of their U.S. operations, came in to work with me so that this person could relocate back to Canada where they were from at a massive pay cut, but believing they could build something really big with me and help me take my little company to the next level. Our visions weren't aligned. We didn't see things the same way, even though we actually worked well together and people saw us as a decent team. But what my failure was realizing each and every day I was losing control of my business. I was losing control of my vision. And I was actually failing. I wasn't just willing to fail. We'd almost bankrupted the company after 20 years. I had to get this person out of my business and start again with a new leader at a time when no one else in my company believed I'd made the right decision. When they say it's lonely at the top, that was a really, really lonely moment. But what I learned from that failure is, again, having the right person in the right seat. If you're going to build something and execute, you need the right executor. And I didn't have that person by my side. And so those days were lonely and difficult, but I made it through. And here we are today in a much, much better place.
Yeah. And I'm sure people are listening and they're probably like, well, of course this guy can talk about he's willing to fail because he does have $300 million, but you're showing your track record of doing it in the past. But here's another thing too, right? You've launched 3 other businesses under the same kind of franchise umbrella type of idea. But that's something that's you're going, here I am. I'm this guy who's grown this massive business. I actually just had a conversation the other day. Organically, somebody mentioned how they used your services and how great it was for 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. And I was like, funny you brought them up because I'm actually interviewing him next week. But with that being said, you decided to leap again. And add these other businesses under your umbrella. So what was that thought process? Like what's the goal with willing to fail beyond what you do with 1-800-GOT-JUNK?
Yeah, it's a great one, Justin. I mean, I think that we started other brands under the ordinary to exceptional brands umbrella, O2E brands. Everything we do is about taking ordinary things like junk removal or windows, gutters, power washing under the Shack Shine umbrella and making those businesses exceptional. Taking ordinary people and making them exceptional leaders, exceptional owners of a franchise. The thinking is, how do we grow great people, great leaders, and build something bigger and better together? I've never been a money motivated guy. So even when, I throw out the term that we've built a $300+ million business, that's to give a context to the size and scale of what we've built, but it isn't about the money.
Yeah.
Now, your listeners might go, yeah, of course this guy can talk about failure because he hasn't had any. Well, you know what? I've had so much failure that's helped to get me inch by inch by inch to where we are today. And I'm grateful for the almost bankrupting the business and having the wrong leaders and the wrong choices. It took me, I think a bit of context for people. It took me 8 years to get to $1 million in revenue. That's slow. That's very, very slow. Our franchise owners, I look at Paul Guy, who runs Toronto 1-800-GOT-JUNK, got there in his first full calendar year. So how do I feel that it took me 8 years and my first franchise owner comes in and does it in a year? That makes me feel like a failure, even though I feel really happy for him. So I think that, long story short on this is failure has to be something we embrace. And when we're in a failure, it's okay to say, okay, what good is going to come from this difficult opportunity?
Yeah, for sure. And I like that you say you're not money motivated. And I know a lot of people say that, and I have so many conversations where people say that, and you can tell. Like, you can tell, like, okay, you're kind of money motivated, even though you just said you're not. But you can feel from you that you truly aren't, that there are other things that motivate you. And I totally understand the idea of, like, yeah, we throw this number out there to prove, like, hey, look, we've built this massive thing. We're supporting these families. So what is it that motivates you to wake up every day and continue to grow these brands?
I believe in making meaning, not money. I write in my book, WTF, Willing to Fail, that there's a big difference in making a living and making a life. And I hope that people can focus on what's required to make a great life, not just a great living. You make a living, and like you said, someone who might not be money motivated, or might be money motivated, but say that they're not. They've got a Ferrari hidden in the garage, right? I drive my little Toyota pickup truck. I don't have any fancy cars hiding anywhere. I've got a great life, but it's not about money. It's about meaning. And so what that looks like for me is I love nothing more than taking someone or seeing someone who's worked in our call center, who grows to become the head of a sales department here in the company. Or I love watching someone who's worked out in the field team who then decides to start their own franchise. I love watching people grow, whether it's entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs. We've got them both here. And it's building something bigger and better together. We're a social business. If I look around the junction, our office, there are people smiling because they're having fun. There's no private offices, and we're in this together. So that's what drives me, just building.
So I actually have a question for you, it's for my own personal interest. How do you preach the culture of entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship at the same time?
It's a great question. So I've done a lot of thinking on this over the years. And to me, not everybody wants to live the so-called quote unquote American dream. Not everyone wants to run their own business. I mean, we've offered opportunities to people here where we would help even finance them because we think they do well at it. And they're like, I don't want to run my own business. Yeah. David St. James, who runs 1-800-GOT-JUNK and started as a sales leader and grew to be the guy running the entire company, over 300 million in revenue. He doesn't want to be an entrepreneur. So what's the difference? And how do we separate the culture in that? Is we're always looking for great people that pass the beer and barbecue test, that want to build something together with a lot of passion. Some want to own, some want to support owners. So the entrepreneur is the one that says, yeah, I want to be the leader at the helm running my market. We'll support them. And you need the intrapreneurs to be on the team to help that person be successful. So some people love to serve. If we look at our intrapreneurs, they're the ones going, yeah, I want to help that entrepreneur be successful. I want to see them win. We're on the same team and let's win together. So two different but very needed roles and personas in the business.
No, for sure. So through all of my interviews of interviewing now billionaires and celebrities and just crazy people, what I've realized is life has become about happiness more than money, or the original goal that they had set out, right? And so they're living this perfect life that they've designed, hopefully. So what does happiness look like for you? Because, like you said, it's not the money. That's just kind of a win within life. But like, what is happiness for you, and how do you kind of achieve that within yourself?
Mm-hmm. I think it was Ben Affleck who I can't remember the movie, what it was called, but he said, whoever says money doesn't buy happiness doesn't have any. And I couldn't disagree with that statement anymore. So any one of your listeners or yourself, anyone that's ever had any money and gone and bought something to try and be happy, you can be having a bad day. You go buy a new car, you go shopping for new clothes. That wears off really, really quick. So how do I define happiness?
Yeah.
I define happiness by building a legacy each and every day. I define happiness as feeling like I'm contributing. One thing about this planet that we're on is we're all human beings, all 9 billion, whatever the population is. I should know that stat, but we are all joined together by all being human beings. And I think that we have a responsibility to our fellow human beings to help people grow, be better people, help make other people happy. And so by providing opportunity, by shining a light on possibility for others. I think that's my gift as an entrepreneur. And when I know it makes a difference to someone, that makes me a lot happier than any of the money that ever flows from those deals.
Yeah, one of the questions I was thinking about asking you is why you wrote the book. And I think I just got the answer, which is about legacy, which is about helping people. So why should somebody go pick up this book? Like, even if they're not an entrepreneur, why should they go pick up this book, and what will it do for them?
Yeah, so maybe I'll even answer that first part of the question of why did I write the book. I struggled with wanting to write a book because I didn't feel passionate about writing a book. I have a hard enough time reading books, and I buy a ton of them, let alone go out and write one. Now, I do love to write, but I have a co-author, Roy H. Williams, who's the wizard of ads, and he does all our radio creative and has for years, and he's a genius. And he said, Brian, you have to write a book. And I said, you keep telling me I need to write one. I don't feel like I want one. My ego doesn't need one. He said, it's not about your ego. It's about all the people that you will impact with your stories and what you have all built at O2E Brands together. You need to tell the story. So I went down to Austin, Texas, sat in a room with him in his Wizard's Tower, and we interviewed back and forth, question after question, and created a 135-page transcript, which became the basic outline, if you will, for the story. So what do I want people to get out of writing this book? One of the things Roy said is when we write this together, it isn't for entrepreneurs. If it's for entrepreneurs, that's a small audience. You want it to be for the entrepreneurs, the intrapreneurs, and people that want to lead a happy life. And so we wrote it in that sense, a lot of storytelling that I believe, and I start the book with this in the preface, is I say, I wrote this book to inspire. I wrote this book so that others could learn some of the lessons that I've learned, but also just reflect on what happiness is, what life is about, what their purpose is, and some tips and tricks on how to get there by embracing failure, by making failure your best friend. So for me, all that to say that writing WTF Willing to Fail was an opportunity for me to inspire. And I felt insecure about the fact that, will my story really inspire? I'm a high school dropout, this and that. You know, I love who I am, but will anyone else care? And it's been phenomenal, the number of emails and messages I've received from people I've never met who've talked about the book being an easy read and that it's very readable and there's nuggets to pull from it in terms of wisdom. I've heard from people that have gotten their kids to read it. I got a 9-year-old who's giving me a review on the book because he said that, listen, it's made such an impact to him. So I feel like the audience is wide, and I'm so grateful that people are enjoying the book.
That's amazing. And it's so funny because as I was looking at your website, I noticed that you had like a write from Tony Hsieh. And Tony Hsieh wrote Delivering Happiness, which I knew even before I was an entrepreneur, I didn't want to grow a huge business. I didn't want to have customer service call centers. I didn't want to ever run a company like that. But that book impacted me in so many ways, even though it was written about pretty much customer service. I mean, it's just much deeper than that. And I just kind of love that concept. Yeah. Tony's a guy who I've reached out to multiple times since the beginning of the show to try and get him on. So I keep trying. But just because this book was so impactful. And I'm so glad to hear that that's what you're doing as well. Because there's not enough people in this world that are doing that, to be honest, because it is about ego. It is about money. It is about what's kind of next. And so first of all, congratulations on selling out the book day one.
Yeah. So it sold out in Canada on day one, and it sold out first week, in the United States. And so felt super proud, and it was unexpected, which was nice. But it's building momentum and having a lot of fun. I'm going to go back to your Tony Hsieh comment for a second, because I believe that entrepreneurs and people are meant to help each other. So Tony is someone I've known for years. So if you haven't had him as a guest, I will send him a note after we're done to say, you know what, you got to talk to this dude because he loved your book. And I think he'd be a great guest on the show.
I appreciate that, man. That would be incredible. I've gotten closer and closer every time, but it's always a game. You know what I mean? And you try and get in there and get rejected by some of his people, but you just keep going back around. But I really appreciate that for sure.
No problem.
So what is your biggest failure in life? And I don't mean the one that you lost the most money or whatever, but what do you consider your biggest failure personally?
Yeah, I don't know so failure is such a tough word because it feels like a negative. It feels like we're being hard on ourselves when we said we failed. So I have a hard time looking back at things and saying, here was my biggest failure. I could look back at things and say, here's my biggest gift or some of the gifts I've had, because that's what failure is.
Yeah.
But if I go on the personal side for a second, I got divorced after being with the same woman, my high school sweetheart, for 19 years, married for 10. We had a baby together. And then terrible timing and a real jerk, but ended the marriage. Now, one of the things that's been great and why it's been a gift is it taught me how to stop thinking about just myself and how to think about others. I started thinking about what I wanted in life and what really made me happy. So at 34 years old, with a new daughter, I was able to actually repair that relationship with my ex to the point that we remained best friends, and she ended up introducing me to my current wife. And so,
that's crazy.
Very strange. But when you end up having someone who is able to help you see some things in yourself, and you're able to be introspective and look at a failure and go, there's a gift in this, it changed my life. I mean, I love the fact that we co-parent our daughter. I love the fact that I've become great friends with her husband, and we ski together. I mean, it's, you can look at these things in life and say, these are difficult moments and these are failures, or you can look at them as gifts and say, this is going to make me a better person, and this is going to make my life and others better.
Yeah, there's a quote that I love that I say pretty often, which is life happens for you, not to you. And so often we have that victim stance is, oh, I fell on my face again. Oh, this last business I tried failed again. But it's really about what are the lessons within those moments. So how quickly are you able to rebound? Because I think it's human nature to be like, wow, this sucks. But there's two types of people. One goes, wow, this sucks. How can I make it better almost immediately? And the other goes, oh, wow, this sucks. And then 6 months later they go, oh, that was a good thing. Like, what's your rebound rate?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I wish I could measure that and say, like I'm so glass half full that every time I fall down, I get right back up. But it depends on the circumstances. Mm-hmm. So I can look at that personal story about my divorce. I mean, it took me a good year to get out of that. Lots of depression. And even after that, I still was a bit messed up, as anyone would be. But I think it depends on what's going on. I think one thing I'm able to do, though, is I'm able to sit back anytime there's a failure that happens and go, okay, this sucks. I'm not enjoying this. And I've got to trust my own belief that everything does work out for the best. I've never been let down. And so when a failure is happening, it's trying to find the balance of, okay, I'm stressed in this moment, but I've also got to step out 34,000 feet and look down on my life and go, what is the gift here? What am I supposed to be learning? When the teacher's ready, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And so I wish there was a formula to say, here's when I get back up. And I'm a human being again, right? I'm someone that gets depression and has some times where I can't get out of bed because a failure's brought me down. But you get up faster, I think, the more failures you have.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what's next for you? Like, you've done so much. You're still a young guy. You still got a lot of life ahead of you. Mm-hmm. So what is next for you in this journey of being an entrepreneur, being a dad and a husband, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think what's next for me is building on what I've got, building on what I've built and what we've built together. And so it's more of a great thing. Some people, have 3 kids, 4 kids, and they decide to keep having more. I mean, it's kind of the same with our brands. We've got 4 brands. Why not have more of a great thing? Why not start other opportunities for other people? Now, we're not ready for more brands right now. We're definitely real busy. Layering on a book launch has made things even crazier. But I think what's next is just more of a great thing. We will be building other brands in the home service space across other industries. Who knows what's next? Carpet cleaning, irrigation systems, I don't know. But there will be other things under the O2E brands umbrella that we will make exceptional. But at the end of the day, what drives me for more is more great people building big, better things together.
Yeah. So when you look back at your life, your dad was a surgeon, I believe, correct?
Still is. Yeah, he does liver transplants, and I never aspired to work the hours he does.
Yeah,
I work hard, but I don't get up in the middle of the night every night solving people's lives.
So your dad was a surgeon. So who inspires you in this entrepreneurial thing? Because so often people have mentors like that are doing something similar. Do you have a mentor? Who inspires you?
Yeah, I have so many mentors. To me, I created what I call my own mentor board of advisors, my own MBA. because I couldn't get one in school. And so I've got all these mentors.
That. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a lot cheaper than a real MBA, but it takes a lot of work to maintain relationships. So you talk about Tony Hsieh. If I want to understand culture, I pick up the phone, as I did. I get on a plane, I fly to Vegas, and I go tour Tony's company with him and understand what drives him, happiness, people. So I'm never afraid to read a book and get in touch with the author. Someone who's a mentor to me could be just literally anybody I meet at any given point in time, and me asking them questions and learning from them. So it's not a name brand person. One of my formal mentors was a guy who's since passed on, but Fred DeLuca, who started Subway. I ran into him at a conference and was starstruck and went, "Oh, you're Fred DeLuca. You started Subway. You're a billionaire," And I remember going up to him and chatting, and he said, "How can I help you?" I was really impressed that he wanted to help me as this little junk removal company that was just starting to franchise. And he made time for me. He gave me his phone number. I'd call him in between meetings. He'd be in his car driving somewhere, and he'd take my calls and he'd chat with me and he'd give me advice. And so mentors could be a name brand person, but most often I find it's just some random stranger that no one would ever know, that you can find out answers to some pretty meaningful life questions just by asking.
Yeah, I love all of that. I mean, that's part of the reason I started the podcast. It's obviously become a lot more, and it's turning into live events that we're creating and everything. But, it started out with like, how can I learn from these people who I have the desire to learn from? And so that's why I love the whole MBA thing. I wish I was catchy like that. I'm just not. When I write a book, it's not going to be titled anything cool like Willing to Fail, WTF. It's just the reality of it all. But what would be a two-parter question here? What's the best advice you've ever received, and what's the best advice you'd give somebody just beginning a journey into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so best advice, I go back to a fellow, Greg Brophy, who started a company, Shred It, which became a massive shredding company, the largest in the world. And years ago, reached out to him. He had franchised his business. He also had some corporate locations. I'm like, what's the one thing I need to know? And he said, never, ever, ever, ever compromise on the quality of people you bring into your organization. And I don't know if I truly understood that advice till years later, when I did things like fire my entire team or get rid of a COO, but you really can't compromise. And when I sit down today and we're hiring people, or I'm in a final stage of an interview with someone, it's that beer and barbecue test that you and I talked about. Would I have a beer with them? Do I find them interesting, interested? Do they have a shared passion for building something bigger and better together? Could they be a mentor to me as much as I could be to them, right? Finding great people and never compromising. All too often, I think this is a problem with corporate America, corporate Canada, that people will hire someone and put them in a seat because they've interviewed them based on skill. They've been impressed by the skill and how they've answered questions, but have they really sat down and looked at attitude? So we've shifted it. Hire an attitude, train on skill, and that absolutely works for us. Now, if you're looking for a doctor, if you're looking for a lawyer, you want people that have training. Clearly, when we're interviewing for people, we're looking for a skill set, but it starts with attitude. I don't want a CFO that has the wrong attitude. I want someone that's got the attitude first and then the skill.
Love that. So I wrap up all these episodes in a similar way, and that's with 5 rapid fire questions. We did this when we first started. So we did this the first time. And the very last question that I asked you today is going to be the same question that I asked you 2.5 years ago. So I'm interested to see if it's the same answer. But before we get there, how do people grab the book? How do they get a hold of you and follow you? So what's all the good stuff?
Go to Amazon, WTF, Willing to Fail. Search my name, Brian Scudamore. It's there.
Awesome, man. So we'll get into the 5 rapid fire questions. Some are fun, some are serious. I just ask you this. Answer within one word or at the most one sentence. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
First one is, if you could have dinner with anybody, living or dead, who would it be?
It'd be my grandparents. Both passed away, but they were the ones that lit my entrepreneurial fire, and I dedicated WTF to them.
That's awesome. What would you ask them?
Oh, great question. What would I ask them? Grandma Florence and Grandpa Kenny. I think I'd just ask them how they've been, right? You don't see someone for 20 years.
Yeah.
It just, what do they think of how their grandkids have turned out?
I love that. What's one trait in a friend that's non-negotiable? Like all your friends have to have this one specific trait.
Truth. Tell them the truth. There's never in my mind or heart any room for lies. I just want someone to be transparent. If you're looking for another job and you're thinking of quitting, hey, tell me, man, I'll help you. Right?
Yeah.
Truth.
Love that. If you were on death row, hopefully that never happens, but if you ever end up on death row, what would be your last meal?
It probably wouldn't be anything that I would eat. It'd probably be something I'd drink, and it would be some nice red wine.
Nice. At the end of your life, if you could only be remembered for one sentence, what would that be?
Possibility.
That's awesome. So obviously this podcast is called The Growth Now Movement. So I wrap up every single episode with this one question. And that is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
My biggest moment of growth has absolutely been every failure. Every failure I talk about in the book, when I fired 11 people, when I got rid of a COO, when one of my friends went missing in the mountains. I mean, all sorts of things that are in that book. Every one of those things taught me something. And I don't think I could quantify and say, here's the biggest piece of growth, because in a way, they're all stairs. They're all stepping stones to the next place in life. And it's just like a storm. A storm has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You don't know how long that storm is, but you know it's going to go away. When I'm in a moment of failure, no matter how short or how long it is, I embrace it and I say, okay, this is going to be another important step in the life of Brian Scudamore.
Brian, that's actually why I enjoyed watching your journey. I think we connected on social media probably like 5 years ago, and I don't even know why. But I've loved watching your journey and seeing everything you've done, because you're real. Because that was the same exact answer you gave 2.5+ years ago, when I interviewed you the first time. So, you're a man of integrity. You're a man who lives life, to give. And I just thank you so much for being that person. And just thank you so much for taking the time and chatting today.
Well, Justin, thank you for having me, and kudos to you for creating something that is making a difference. Your podcast is phenomenal, and I think you do such great work sharing all the learnings of all the amazing people you interview. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.